Legend of Total War here, and today we're doing another Total War Warhammer 3 Immortal Empires campaign review, this time covering Epidemius. So he is the second Nurgle Legendary Lord added for Thrones of Decay, and he is only available in the Immortal Empires campaign, and he is completely free. So as long as you own Warhammer 3, you can get access to Epidemius. So this is the campaign that I played on a live stream. We did one live stream of this campaign, and I definitely enjoyed this campaign. There's a lot of interesting quirks to it for sure. But I want to talk about his start position, which is over here. So he starts at the Forest of Decay and also owns the Bilious Cliffs. Your starting enemy is the All-Seeing Eye, which is a minor Tzeentch faction. Now, typically, Tzeentch is super good against Nurgle, but you do start off with just overwhelming power to them, so they're quite easy to deal with quite quickly. Now, there's some interesting tricks that you can do involving the Demon Prince, which didn't really work out for me in this particular campaign, but I have tested it out before, and it can work, so this is very much luck-based. But something that can give you a really strong start in the campaign, which again, didn't happen in this one, which I was disappointed in, but anyway. If you get to here by turn 4, right on the edge of Volcano's Heart with Epidemius, you have to make sure that it's before the Demon Prince is standing here. So if you stand here and the Demon Prince is already there, you're too late. Right? You need to be standing there, and then the Demon Prince over the end turn moves to this position, basically signaling that he is attacking the Crystal Spires the next turn. He will beat that without your help, but what you want to do here is help him take massive casualties. So what you want to do is on that turn is force march over to here, or regular march, as long as you can be within the range here to reinforce the Demon Prince. He will make the attack. You can decide to decline the attack if you really want to, but the best case scenario is actually to fight it, because in Warhammer 3, Legendary Lord factions, so major factions, will always get like a massive boost over minor factions, so they'll basically always win, and they usually won't take much damage. And if they auto-resolve that, he'll usually take a little bit of damage across every single unit and then fully replenish. And then you've got the Demon Prince sitting in here with a full stack. Not ideal. So, what you would want to do instead is fight the battle manually, and he is guaranteed to at least lose half his army, because he's not going to fight it very well as a siege battle. Most of his units are going to be demons, and they're going to disintegrate when they get low in health, and the Demon Prince himself might end up getting killed in the battle, which is just going to be great for you, because fighting him can be a bit of a pain with Nurgle. So he'll be wrecked. He may even lose the actual fight, and you may need to finish it off. You could always withdraw, but if there's a sufficient amount of Tzeentch forces, keep in mind that they might teleport on top of you over the end turn. So, let's just assume you win that battle there, and then the Demon Prince sacks the settlement and stands out over here. Well, then just attack him with the piddly amount of force that he's got left, wiped out, then occupy the settlement. If he occupies the settlement, he'll have a piddly little force with a little bit of replenishment. He'll be probably trying to recruit new units. Kill him anyway. Attack him, because he'll have next to no garrison, and it'll be an easy battle for you. It's probably the easiest way to get rid of the Demon Prince. But unfortunately, in this particular campaign here, what happened was I was there waiting for him, and he never bloody made the attack. And so what ended up happening is that the Tzeentch forces recruited an army, made their way over here. I attacked them, realized the Demon Prince wasn't going to come and help, and so I just made the attack myself. And at that point then, Malleus Darkblade declared war on me, so I needed to wrap this up right away. Got a non-aggression pact with him, and I just beelined it straight over here to fight Malleus Darkblade. Because I didn't have much time to prepare for him, he attacked the Bilious Cliffs. I had no chance of beating him, and he force marched over to here to threaten the Forest of Decay, at which point Epidemius made it back, fought him, beat him, and then rolled over him. And then that was kind of the challenge of the campaign over at that point. Once you've defeated Malleus Darkblade, kind of easy from there. Varg declared war on me, but it was just relative nuisance. There's quite a few factions out here that can be very friendly towards you, as we'll get into in a little bit. So diplomacy is definitely an option. Now, let's talk about confederations. When it comes to Ku'gath Plaguefather, pretty similar sort of situation that happened in the Tamrakhan campaign. Colt shows up, negotiate with Ku'gath, join his wars, be best buddies with him. He's pretty much guaranteed to lose his army at some point, at which point he's easy to confederate. Confederating him as early as possible is always beneficial, and then just sell off his settlements afterwards. Now, as for Tamrakhan, however, which we notice over here, we do have him, it's a different story. Ideally, you want Tamrakhan to exist for as long as possible. So in this campaign, Tamrakhan just sat around here doing nothing, because you can see that Kurlek Sunny is still here. But when you're not playing as Nurgle, Tamra decides to go absolute ham and conquer a bloody empire. So I think there's something about the AI factions that are of your same race. They kind of are way less aggressive when you're playing that particular race. Anyway, so he was just sitting there. Archaon finished up his war, came over here, threatened him or whatever. Tamra went over there, lost to Archaon, and I realized he had one turn before he was going to get wiped out. So I confederated him. Because I did not want to have to spend 40 turns trying to revive him and having to fight Archaon to just get there. So by confederating him, I got the Plains of Zanbai-Jin, which I then sold to Archaon and turned him into a vassal. So that was actually, I think that was pretty good because he's paying me 1,000 vassal tribute and his vassal became my vassal. And that just protects my border out here immensely, allowing me to just focus on one frontier out this way. Now, there's a downside to confederating Tamra early, in that the longer that you leave it, the more of his chieftains that he'll accumulate. Once you've confederated him, he won't accumulate any more chieftains, so there's no way for me to get the other guys. Also, he will progress the fealty as the AI faction, but once you've confederated him, there is no way for me to improve this. Not that it's a huge deal for most of these guys. The big loss is that these guys here don't have any upkeep, and I'm missing out on a few of these heroes. Not the end of the world by any means, but it would have been great to have gotten them, so leave it as late as possible. But obviously, if he's on the verge of death, you know, you gotta do what you gotta do. Now, in terms of the three legendary lords, it's kind of an unholy trinity in terms of who's the strongest, right? When it comes to spell casting and range, obviously, Ku'gath Plaguefather is the guy, right? In terms of what he boosts for his army, he's not really that good at it. Not really. He provides a bunch of global bonuses to like Nurglings and Great Unclean Ones, but he as a commander is kind of mid. Then we've got Tamra over here, who is pretty good commander for mortal units and an absolute beast of a fighter. Definitely the best melee fighter of the three. And then you've got Epidemius, who is not a spellcaster, not a ranged character, definitely not as good at melee as Tamra, but what he does have is he is probably the best commander of the three because of all the things that he can do to boost his army. He himself is not the shining example in the battle. Like, he's not going to be inflicting 1,000 kills, but he's going to boost his army so that they can get the 1,000 kills on his behalf, right? Which I think makes sense for what he is. I mean, he's sitting on his ass basically on the toilet, whatever. So you got this one over here. Setting up plagues as Epidemius is pretty easy, so plaguing difficult armies that you're about to go up against will definitely give you an incentive. Your forces will most likely be melee attack focused, so that's a good bonus to have. Passive ability regeneration, also good when fighting against someone with a plague. You've also got Talisman of Pestilence, so he's providing a big area of effect bonus to any unit that's demonic. So don't give him mortal units, doesn't make sense. Won't get any benefit from it. Talisman's Host, big bonuses to plague bearers and the plague toads and rotflies stuff. Personally, I like the plague bearers better than the plague toads and rotflies, but it's entirely up to you how you want to go about it. You can always get a mix. Entirely up to you. But yeah, big bonuses there for sure. Reduced upkeep cost and extra weapon strength. Very useful. Then we've got this one here. Pox Seedling for him. He's good at growing settlements, basically. Growth all provinces and population surplus for newly captured settlements, which you can cheese that a little bit by abandoning a settlement and then reoccupying it, giving yourself an extra population surplus. But that means his army isn't out there fighting, so it's not something that I would recommend doing. But if you're being a passive player, there's nothing wrong with doing that. It's entirely up to you. This one here is also really good. Plague Lord's Favorite. Plague immunity duration -1 turn for all future plagues. And infection cost to create plague. So that's really going to be useful. So having loads of infections or having cheaper plagues means that you can spend your infections on other things. Just, there's always something that you can spend an infection on, whether it be building more military buildings or going to your existing military buildings and just spending a bit more to rush the cycle. So any way you can make it a bit cheaper is going to provide long-term benefits for you as well. And because it's so beneficial for Epidemius to be making plagues, you're going to want to be doing that all the time. So make it cheaper. And then we've also got Perpetual Pestilence there, so upgrading his Talisman's Blades. So that's a summon that he can do. But that's kind of something that a cultist can do anyway, so that's nothing too spectacular. He does have a lot of health, though. So looking at his equipment, it's alright. There's nothing... I don't think this is fantastic stuff. It's alright, looking over the stuff. It's stat boosts all over the place. Bit of extra relations with demons. It's great. Reduced upkeep cost, -5%. Yeah, good stuff, for sure. Speed for enemy units in the local region, that's great. I mean, you're probably still not going to be able to catch up with them, but still, it's better than nothing. Obviously, in this campaign here, I haven't got all of his equipment yet. Now, let's talk about his campaign mechanic. Now, I think this is where, for me personally, this is going to be a very personal preference. It doesn't really appeal to me because it feels a bit more passive compared to what I normally like in a campaign, which is more active abilities. Now, I'll try to explain the difference between what I consider to be a passive mechanic and an active mechanic. So a passive mechanic is one that just happens like stat bonuses, right? It just provides bonuses behind the scenes, but doesn't fundamentally change the gameplay. You're still doing the same thing. Take, for example, Khorne. Khorne's ability, like if you use a Skull Throne, that's kind of passive, except for the fact that it gives you summons, which in battle is an active ability where you pop down the summons matters. But what I'm more referring to with Khorne is Blood Hosts. Creating a Blood Host requires you to actually utilize it, and what you do with that Blood Host really matters. So taking that Blood Host and getting it wiped out because you suck at battles, that's not going to be so good. Taking it and dominating with it on the battlefield and making more Blood Hosts with it could have massive cascading benefits throughout the entire campaign and could project your power into insane levels, which is why I consider Khorne to be the strongest faction in the game. Very active ability, but requires a lot of finesse, right? That's the kind of stuff that I like. Now, a passive one doesn't require much finesse. It just boosts the stats, really, and that's great for a lot of people. Some people just love stat boosting, and there's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. It's a personal preference thing. I prefer active abilities and mechanics over passive ones, and a lot of this is just sort of passive bonuses, like research rate boost, passive bonus. There's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. Getting your tech tree sorted is good. There's some really good stuff in here, so getting it sorted quickly, awesome. And upgrading his army is definitely good. Any enemy armies that are affected by a plague created by your faction will be significantly weakened, more so than whatever the plague has dished out to them. Again, these are relatively passive stuff there, except for maybe the +3 uses of Talisman's Blades. Now, another thing is that the Tally of Pestilence, getting this tally up, at this stage of the campaign, I haven't really been incentivized that much to do it. It will probably happen a lot more passively as the campaign progresses, as we get more bonuses through the tech tree of infectivity, duration, that kind of stuff. It will just naturally infect other factions, including friendly factions like Archaons, right? Because what I've been focusing on here is the beneficial side of having a plague. So we've got growth +25, income from all buildings +10%. So that's really providing me with a huge amount of money. I'm trying to spread that to all of my regions, so I'm getting a massive benefit from that. Now, if I was to take this plague, which I think this plague mechanic is much better than what it used to be, but plagues are not very effective at defeating enemy forces. But let's just take Reikland, for example. If I was to put this symptom on there, -25 growth on them, do you think that that's really going to affect them, considering they get growth cheats? Not that big of a deal. Do you think -4 melee defense is really going to be that big of a deal, especially considering on very hard battle difficulty, they're basically got more cheats than that for the most part? It's not very impactful. So there's a lot of stuff over here, like increasing their upkeep cost by 15%. This is a higher difficulty level problem. Most of the AI factions are they just get so many cheats that this doesn't do anything to them. And so it's way more beneficial for you to focus on the positives on your faction rather than the negatives on an enemy faction. And this sort of focuses on inflicting negatives. And so you've got a campaign sort of conflict with that. And I think this is primarily a higher difficulty problem. But let's just take Reikland as an example here, right? And the 4 different gods of chaos. And whether or not you can destroy Reikland using just the mechanic of that particular god. So when it comes to Khorne, could you demolish Reikland using Blood Hosts? Absolutely you could. You don't need to send any of your proper armies in there. I've destroyed entire races just using Blood Host armies, right? Absolutely you could do that. Could you do that with Slaanesha's devotee armies? Of course you can. The devotee armies can be full stacks. Of course you could roll in here, and there's no real limit to how many that you can have at a time. So you could totally destroy Reichland using devotee armies. Could you destroy Reichland using Tzeentch's Changing of the Ways? Ugh, that one not so much. I mean, you could definitely totally wreck them, but as for destroying Reichland, I mean, you could swap their settlements with loads of people, you could break all their allies, but finishing them off will require you to actually send an army into battle. Again, just using your armies, not necessarily using your campaign mechanic. And then as for plagues, could you destroy Reichland using plagues? No, not really. I mean, you could tickle them a bit, you know. You could hurt them if they're already struggling. You could maybe speed things up a little bit, their demise, but ultimately they will lose their campaign based on battles. And so it's relatively low impact. But I think that when it comes to plagues, it's more beneficial for players that don't like to be super friggin' aggressive, and it comes down to personal preferences. And this is why I really enjoy Khorne, but other people will really enjoy Nurgle, and it's just a personal preference. There's nothing wrong with this mechanic at all, and when it comes down to comparing it to FLC characters from like Warhammer 2, at least he got something, right? When you look at FLC, some of the FLC characters, like Tretch Craventail, he doesn't even have a campaign mechanic, right? So he's already up there, and Tretch was the first legendary lord for free in Warhammer 2, and Epidemius is the first legendary lord for free in Warhammer 3. So it's a good start for sure. It's just that it's weird that we're starting 2 years after Warhammer 3 came out. You know, it's a bit of a slow start with all this stuff. It's definitely a good baseline. So in terms of like comparing it to Warhammer 2 stuff, this is somewhere in the middle. It's not as good as the mechanics, I think, from like Imric and Alith-Anar, which are like, I consider to be the benchmarks of FLC like quality. Like, these are really good campaign mechanics that are on par with DLC characters. This, I would say, is not on par with DLC characters. It's just a bit below it. You know, all the other Thrones of Decay guys, they've just got way more effort put into their stuff. But that's obviously what's going to happen, because the paid content is always going to be a bit better, because they want to incentivize you to buy it. If Epidemius's mechanic was way more interesting than Tamrakhan's, then people might not buy Tamrakhan. So it's just a business decision. It's fair enough. But overall, in terms of how I've enjoyed this campaign, I've enjoyed all 4 of the Thrones of Decay factions, and I'm really happy with this DLC. But somebody's got to be my favorite, and someone's got to be my least favorite. And Epidemius is probably my least favorite, and Malachi is definitely my most favorite. I really enjoyed that campaign, and when I think about, of the 4 campaigns, which one do I want to spend the most amount of time on, it's definitely Malachi. And which one do I want to spend the least amount of time on? It's definitely Epidemius. If I was going to play Nurgle, I'd probably prefer to play as Tamrakhan. Anyway, that's the end of this one here, guys. Let me know in the comments below about what you think of Epidemius, whether you agree or disagree with my assessments. Curious to hear your thoughts, because I didn't finish this campaign. I didn't really have much desire to finish it either. But let me know your thoughts on Epidemius' campaign and Nurgle rework in general. Overall, I'm very happy with the vast majority of things that I've seen in Thrones of Decay, and this is hopefully a great step going forward with Warhammer 3, and I hope Creative Assembly can continue with this momentum, and I'm here to support them in doing that. You know, it's really great that I'm spending some time now not blasting them. That's been fun, because that hasn't been fun. Anyway, that's the end of this one. Appreciate you, and we'll see you next time. Later, guys.